I was raised on the east side of LA by a single mom on welfare. At one point, we were so broke, we moved into a tent behind my grandma's trailer. This wasn't a nice trailer park. It was the kind of place where hunched men in polyester pants fill their front yard with bags of recycling, and old women in muumuus with large, intricate varicose veins spend afternoons watering the astroturf. To get ready for school in the morning, I walked down the driveway past a dozen or so other trailers to the community bathroom. I grew up in predominantly Mexican neighborhoods in the 80s and 90s, and was typically one of the few white kids in my schools. Being different was all that I ever knew, but it wasn't always easy. In the third grade, I was bullied by girls who pretended to be my friends. I was locked in a closet. I was teased for my name, my appearance, my introverted personality, my honor roll status, my Payless shoes, and for the fact that my mom told me once she was bisexual, and I thought that this was something to brag about. One day I found a good hiding spot in the playground, and I stayed there until junior high. Eventually, I made it all the way to high school and had a chance to start from scratch. I decided I wasn't going to be bullied again, but for this to work, I had to reinvent myself as something tough, but also beautiful. Cool, but also terrifying. Naturally, I gravitated to the fiercest archetype I knew, the chola. I plucked my eyebrows into super thin arches, wore heaps of eyeliner, red lipstick, and black clothing. I spent my lunch breaks circling the campus alone as fast as I could, as if I had someplace important to be. I figured if I just kept walking for the next 4 years, maybe I could avoid the other kids entirely. After about a week of this, a short, curvy Mexican girl tapped me on the shoulder. She was wearing a Morrissey t-shirt and a nose ring, and she was out of breath. She said she'd been following me for days, trying to catch up with me. And she also said that I looked lost. She invited me to come hang out with her and her friends, and she pointed to a group of weird-looking kids perched under a tree in the distance. This was the beginning of the rest of my life. She introduced me to the alternative kids, to the artists, the hippies, goths, and homosexuals. Again, this was on the east side of LA before gentrification. To be different, to look different, it meant something. And this was the first time in my life I felt like I fit in or belonged. We used to ditch school to take LSD. We played dress up and truth or dare. We snuck into gay nightclubs. And we experimented with the most ungodly combinations of substances. And we drank the cheapest of wine because we were explorers, testing our limits, diving deep into our identities and the meaning of being alive. My mom loved my friends. They reminded her of her youth in San Francisco in the 1970s. And she figured that if we were going to be experimenting with all the things we were experimenting with, we should do so in a safe environment. So she let us party at our house. One night, my mom heard coming from my room what she thought was a stampede of elephants. She came upstairs and opened the door. It was dark except for the candles. The doors were blasting on the boombox, and there were 7 teenagers on the balcony. We were standing in a circle in the moonlight, and we were wearing nothing but our underwear, and we were doing the hokey pokey. It was the sound of my mom's laughter that broke us from the spell of this freedom dance. It was around this time that I first met Javier. Javier was a beautiful artist. His family was from Aguascalientes and Guadalajara. And a decade later, in my mid-20s, Javier and I were engaged. His mom made this delicious salsa. The recipe was top secret, but she eventually shared it with me. What you might not know unless you're Mexican or grew up undercover like me is that every Mexican family has a top secret salsa recipe. That shit is like Chinese tea leaves. You can tell everything about a family based on their salsa, their state of origin, where they buy their groceries, who's pregnant, and who in the family is next to die. My mom was constantly trying to get me to give her that salsa recipe. And I'd say, I'm sorry, Mom, I can't give it to you. Do you know how many Mexicans I've slept with before being trusted with a salsa recipe? I had to agree to marry someone. If I introduce this cosa muy precioso to los blancos, I might be cursed by a shaman, or hunted by the mafia. My mom never stopped asking me for that fucking salsa recipe, even 15 years later. Last January, my mom moved from Hawaii to come and live with me in LA. She was still broke and couch surfing, but this time instead of toting an awkward kid, she was dying from cancer. I sensed she wasn't going to make it through the year, and I decided to throw a Cinco de Mayo party so that my family and I could be together one last time doing something fun. We had sandía, carne asada, maíz, guacamole, and tortillas. I told my mom I had something important to share with her and let her come into the kitchen and watch as I made the top secret Martinez family salsa, and I told her every single ingredient. She died 5 months later. The story is for her. It's for the outsider she was, and for the outsiders who have found me and saved my life over and over again. We are not alone. Thank you.